We're BeetleBoards. I'm Erica. I'm a senior here at the Paul School of Business and Economics. I'm studying entrepreneurial studies, and I've been an avid snowboarder for most of the part of my life.
And my name is Lyndsay Levin. I'm also a senior here at the Paul School studying business administration with a concentration in marketing. Since I was 6 years old, I've been skiing and snowboarding, or just trying to get it down to the bottom of the mountain, so I try.
Okay, so our company focuses on building boards off of beetle pine wood. And if you're not familiar with this, I'm going to get a little bit into the background of this wood. So it's caused by this small beetle you see up here. It's only 5 millimeters big. And it inhibits these trees and causes massive areas of deforestation, as you can see in these pictures. And you see it all out west. And I've seen this result firsthand multiple times on my snowboarding trips to the mountains in Colorado. So just how big is this deforestation? This map up here depicts areas that are inhibited by the mountain pine beetle. Since the mid-1990s, it's responsible for over 60 million acres of deforestation, ranging from northern New Mexico to British Columbia. So why is this a big problem? These deforested trees can't absorb the CO2 gases. They also increase the likelihood of widespread wildfires, and they destroy habitats for animals. So we see this as a huge problem. Up here in this corner, you can see a normal tree, and then right here you can see one that's affected by the mountain pine beetle. As the mountain pine beetle tunnels through the core of the tree, it leaves behind a blue fungus called blue stain fungus, which is the samples that Lyndsay just passed around. And this causes the tree to stop uptaking water and nutrients and eventually leads to its death. So we see other purpose for these boards beyond like these other condemned trees. We repurpose them into these cool, unique, one-of-a-kind snowboards. And each board is individually unique due to the beetle's unique pattern that it traveled throughout the core of the tree. So we've identified a manufacturer, Mervin Snowboards. They're based out of Seattle. And they're a leader in sustainable snowboard production. They manufacture for large companies such as LibTech and Roxy. And they practice many sustainable practices that are listed here that we will use in our boards. On the opposing side, there's many common practices right now that are used in snowboard production that aren't healthy to the environment and aren't doing any good. We've also identified a mill. It's called Mountain Woodworks, and it's out in Colorado, and they'll be supplying us our beetle pine wood. So here's a prototype of our board, and right here is a cross-section of it. This top layer right here will be a thin layer of colorful beetle pine wood. And then this second layer right up here will be a biax glassing that will really provide strength to the board. And then this middle is a hybrid between bamboo and beetle pine wood, providing balance and flexibility in the board. And then this bottom is a cinched base that will make it very easy to navigate the mountains. So through using wood cores, we're able to give riders a feeling of stability and power that plastic cores just cannot achieve. There's a U.S. Department of Agriculture study showing that the quality of the mountain pine wood is not compromised by blue stain fungus so long as the tree is harvested before rotting occurs. Just to look at the pricing of our boards, so our cost to produce the board will be around $100 a board as long as we are ordering orders of 300. So we will be selling these for $600, and that's a competitive price to other high-end snowboards on the market right now. So we'll be yielding a $500 profit margin from these e-commerce sales. Additionally, we'll be penetrating retail stores in year 2, and we'll be selling them boards at a wholesale price of $450. So this will yield us a profit margin of $350 per board.
So as Erica was just explaining, we have a really solid product, and we're entering a solid market with sizable volume. The winter sports industry has really been thriving for decades. In 2014 to 2015, over 7.5 million snowboarders hit the slopes, and they spent over $800 million, as a whole, and that's just on snowboards. That's not on boots, winter gear, or bindings. And globally, that puts estimates at $450 billion. And as you can see in this little pie chart here, there are 2 main age groups that take part in this, even though it's an age-inclusive sport. And those are ages 18 to 24 and 25 to 34. So together they take up about 47% of the market, and that's really who we're trying to target is the millennials. A 2015 Nielsen study found that 72% of millennials are willing to pay more for products and services that are sourced from companies that are committed to positive social and environmental change. And really that's what BeetleBoards is striving to do. We want to be the go-to snowboarding company for millennials.
So we've talked about sustainability in the sense of the materials we're using in our manufacturing process, but there are also other aspects of our business where we want to continue being sustainable. We're taking an initiative for each board that is purchased. We're going to plant a new tree in an affected area. Also, we're going to partner with 1% for the Planet, which is an organization of different businesses with large names such as Patagonia that donate 1% of their annual sales to different nonprofits that fund sustainable practices and keeping the environment safe. Additionally, we'll be sustainable from a business aspect in terms of our large profit margins that will give a good feedback for investors as well as to the business and our projected sales, which Lyndsay will discuss later. It will also be sustainable to the consumer because our boards are competitively priced with other boards.
So just to talk a little bit about the numbers behind BeetleBoards, snowboarding is big business. If we capture just 1/2 of the market, our sales are going to be over $660,000. So it really doesn't take a significant market share to achieve big numbers. As you can see here, I have simple sales and expenses charts, year 1 through 3. Year 1, we have just a slight profit, but as you can see, year 3, we're well on our way to having a thriving business. And throughout our research, we've really been careful to accurately forecast expenses, as well as conduct interviews with people with industry experience, as well as experience with startups. And that's how we arrived at $145,000. That's what we will need to get BeetleBoards off the ground. And that number really pales in comparison to what a lot of startups nowadays are looking for. So just to break that number down a little further, we're going to crowdfund 100 BeetleBoards for a total of $45,000 raised. We're also looking for an angel investor to invest $75,000 in the company. We've actually been in contact with a gentleman who's a pioneer in the snowboarding industry. He seemed really interested in our idea, which is awesome, and we're excited to see where that takes us. The rest of the money will be raised through a combination of bootstrapping as well as any prize money from the Holloway competition. If we are so lucky to earn some money from the Holloway competition, that will go directly towards funding the manufacturing of BeetleBoards prototypes. So we know manufacturing can be a lengthy and tricky process, so it would be really integral to get some prize money to really get this process going for us. Another important thing to touch upon is our profit margin. Erica talked a little bit about it earlier, but I really want to touch back on that 83.33%. That's a really significant number in terms of investment, but also for the company's bottom line. And the bulk of our 2 costs are really manufacturing and marketing. And we have a really big marketing play, and it's a lot of money, so I want to go into that with you too. So we're going to call this the Beetle Blitz, and basically what that means is Erica and I will be traveling around the western part of the country in this funky old school Volkswagen van, and we're going to go to the top ski resorts in the area, mountain to mountain, with this van stacked high with BeetleBoards. We are going to have boards for demonstration purposes as well as raffles. So in order for people to enter into those raffles, they're going to have to give us some sort of contact information, whether it be a phone number, an email address, a physical mailing address, liking us on social media. The whole purpose of this campaign is to build brand awareness in preparation for a major product launch later in the year. So throughout this presentation, we've been exclusively talking about snowboards, but I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about what we see as the future of BeetleBoards. So I want to do a little exercise with everyone in the room, judges included, if that's okay. So I want everyone, if you know a snowboarder or you are a snowboarder, to raise your hand. And now, this is good. So if you know a skier or are a skier, raise your hand too and keep them up. And if you know anyone who has surfed, paddleboarded, wakeboarded, skateboarded, or longboarded, keep your hands raised. So if you take a look around and see all the hands raised, this is what we see as BeetleBoards' future, but on an astronomically larger scale. You can put your hands down, thank you. So we want to penetrate these markets eventually because these activities resonate with millennials, whether it be snowboarding, skiing, that sort of thing, whatever it may be, that resonates. So we want to break into those markets. And I'd like to open it up for questions.
So have you already made a prototype of this board, and is it in fact, you know, when you were talking, you said, you know, it gives you more power, it's flexible, you can control the you know, the hill as you're coming down. Have you used the board? Has anybody used the board yet?
We have not used a board with this, but it is compatible to other boards that, most quality boards are manufactured with wooden cores. So the only thing that's different is we're putting a thin wooden veneer that's about 0.09 of a centimeter on top. And wooden cores are really good for quality snowboard. And ours is no different than typical uses of different woods such as poplar. It's actually stronger than poplar, and that's a typical one. People also use bamboo, which we're using in our board because it will be great for the strength. So ours will be very compatible with other boards on the market. I've also talked to engineering students who have run a flex analysis on how the board will bend, and it is going to sustain. And we've also talked to the manufacturer about this, but we haven't made a prototype yet. That's what we are hoping to do with the money to push us forward.
What percentage of the board is Beetlewood?
I'm not sure on the exact
Just
percent.
the ballpark is.
Probably about.
It's so thin, it's hard to ballpark, but really,
Well,
it's
and you
the
said
core-
there's some
the
If we're
core-
stripes in the
talking about
core.
yeah.
had a-
Yeah, the strips in the core so are interlayered between bamboo and beetlewood vertically. So it's probably about 50-50 there, and then the top veneer of beetlewood. But also there are other things that go into it, like the Viex glassing, and then the inserts and metal rimming around the board for the edges.
And given that deforestation's occurred,
Right.
do you have an idea of what supply you'd have? I'm going into now your success, and you've got the Beetle board going. Do you have any idea?
Yes, so this is responsible so far for over 60 million acres worth of deforestation. However, it's been a growing trend with global warming and everything. The nights aren't as cold and the winters aren't as cold, so the beetle is more prevalent. So it's really causing more die-offs, and there isn't really too much of a solution they can do for this. And people are already using this wood in different sorts of applications, whether it be in homes or in guitars, but it's not really being done in the winter sports industry yet, so the supply is definitely there.
So there's, what's the natural predator of this beetle, or is there any, you know, program to kill the beetle,
The only
given the deforestation?
Yeah. So the techniques they currently use is they can only treat infected trees right now. So they'll spray a tree after it's infected, and then the beetle larvae can't spread to other trees from there, but they can't treat anything until these trees are already infected.
So there are manufacturers out there collecting this
Yeah.
wood, right?
Yeah,
And
mills.
So you've been able to contact them to find
Yes.
out
Yes.
availability
Yeah.
and quality specs? and
Yep,
that
pricing,
sort
yep.
So that's how we base the pricing of our boards. We based it off of 8-foot long slabs, which would be about the tallest the biggest size we would make of a snowboard, and got price points back from them. But yeah, there's an abundant supply. Like, people are running out of things to do with it because they want to use this wood instead of chopping down other trees. So they're building log cabins, as Lyndsay said, furniture. There's a lot of things going on with this, and there's a really large supply, and there's a lot of people to get it from.
And so you're manufacturing. You're going to get the prototype manufactured, but are you planning in this $100 cost that you outlined? Is that from the outsourced manufacturer, and you don't intend to build the manufacturing plant, right? You're just going to outsource it?
At the moment, we're planning to outsource something along the lines in the future. We might be interested in looking into like opening our own thing in Colorado, but I think that would be far ahead in the future, dependent on growth and when we expand to these other markets.
So that $100 cost is something you've already investigated,
Yes.
and that is your true cost of goods?
Well,
Yes.
that's the variable cost per board. We have contacted Mervin, the manufacturer, and they do not produce Mervin boards. They are a contract manufacturer. So we do have in our expenses report, we do have that outlined as about $20,000 to $30,000, I believe.
For
So
a
that's,
licensing
yep,
agreement.
so that's in there as a contract.
So when you show the line item labor on your cost,
Yep.
is it just labor, or is that what the
Uh,
supplier is saying, I'm going to charge you this amount?
That's for the labor because we have the licensing contract with them, so that's what we're paying them annually to produce that, and we're supplying all our own materials. So we're directly paying for those. And then the labor is the only other thing that we need to pay cost per board. And it takes an average of 2 to 2.5 hours to produce a snowboard. And the labor wage rate for snowboard manufacturing is about $19 per hour.
But a contract manufacturer would, when they quote a price to supply somebody, they have to price in energy, working capital, interest, all kinds of things that are costs of their business that they price in. Labor is one component, and in making snowboards, I would imagine it's probably the biggest component of making a snowboard is probably labor, but there's other stuff that they would price in. Have they talked about that?
We do have a lot of wiggle room in our budget. It's $20,000 to $30,000 that we have budgeted for the contract. We have been in touch with them, but since it is a private company, they're hesitant to give us more information until we have the capital to get the prototype
And until you
from
actually
them.
have a prototype that you
Right,
make.
right, and we don't have
But
the
they,
capital for
they
that
quoted
just
it
yet.
complete, right? $100 total. You give them,
Yes, that's
and they're
the-
gonna supply all the
that's
other
the
materials in there, you're just gonna give them the wood, right? They're gonna-
We're supplying the wood and the raw materials. That's all calculated for.
The other raw materials, like there's some kind of a
They're
hard plastic
resins.
or
Yeah.
resin
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
things. So the 100 is just the fabrication.
Correct,
basically.
and that's based off orders of 300 boards or more.
Yeah.
So of course, to get our prototypes and get our first few boards, it's not gonna be that cheap. It's gonna be more expensive for us to do, but we really need to do this in order to move forward with this project. We need to test our boards, we need to gain feedback, we need to ride them ourselves, and
It's still a good
So
margin.
it should come out,
Are other manufacturers that put veneer on there so people like to choose a wood board, but doesn't have a green, it's just the opposite of what you're
Right.
selling, it's chopping a good tree down,
Exactly.
right? So there is a taste for that
Mhm.
wood out there, so you're just basically gonna, and do you put the bindings on this yourself before you sell it?
we are not selling bindings right now, it's just exclusively a snowboard.
Gotcha.
Have you thought about where you're gonna keep your 300 boards, your first 300, then your 1,000 boards, then your
On
5,000
the
boards?
roof.
Yes.
Besides,
Well, aside from in the Beetle van.
God forbid the Beetle van gets stolen.
You can't fit 300 in a Beetle van, but we have, in our expenses, we have allotted money for an office space to store them.
In a warehouse space.
Well, it doesn't,
Doesn't need to be a
we
lot for the
won't, we
first
won't need a
300,
warehouse.
but.
Yeah, it doesn't take up that much room to stack these. So
Right, you need
we
to
can
ship
stack
them and
a fair
pack them.
amount of them in a pretty small
And do you
space.
plan to sell them in those sort of local retail stores? Is that sort of,
Yep.
Yeah.
in
So-
addition to, I know you talked about crowdfunding up front and some online things.
Yes,
and-
so we have conducted interviews with a number of people in the industry, one of which is a ski and snowboard shop owner in North Conway, and I've shared the idea with him, and he's very interested in it, and he would be very willing to include that in his
I was wondering what
inventory.
it would take, there's a lot of snowboard lines out there. What would make a new line, what would it have to take to make it appealing to them?
Mhm.
And two, you mentioned that you were gonna sell to them for roughly about $450. Will they work off $150 margins?
Yes, that's also from industry standards and talking to people in industry, that's regular MSRP markup. That's how we came to the $450 working backwards.
Yeah, it's a pretty good price at $100.
What's the
And then
competitive
manufacturing.
price range for other boards?
They can range anywhere, like low-end boards can be about 300 to they can range to thousands. They can be like $2,000, but a good quality high-end board that's at an affordable price are usually around 600 to 700.
So are you more like a customized board than a mass-produced? Is that how you're?
More hybrid, I'd say.
Every board's unique on its own because it's naturally occurring, but we use the same process. So we are not really customizing anything. When we get into that, it's going to be a lot more difficult to manufacture and probably end up in a lot more costs on our end through going through the manufacturer. So it's just this one board, and then we're going to launch other lines of it as well.
I mean, if you really love the board and you're a good snowboarder and you've tried every color, brand, flavor, I did skis as a kid, and everybody tried to sell something, and sometimes you could kind of sense it, and sometimes you couldn't. But if you got a board and you looked at it, would you cut it in half and then just say, okay, we need to laminate this, we need to do this, you go to your $100 manufacturer. I mean, is that something that happens? I mean, it's a big industry, so,
I know they do.
are you that finicky about the board at that point?
I mean, quality is really important to
Yeah,
us,
if
so
you're good,
getting
you
a
have to be,
prototype.
so
Right.
you're gonna select the board that you're presuming is gonna be.
Yes. We
you
don't
know.
want to compromise quality for
Yeah.
sustainability. We're not like reinventing the wheel. We're just making it a little bit more sustainable. So we're using everything that's already out there.
It's not gonna distract from the quality.
Exactly,
right.
You have to
It's
pick
the
that,
same.
you have to pick that board.
Because,
and
yeah,
you've
these
got-
are industry norms, we're just
Yeah.
using a little bit different
Yeah.
type of wood to do it.
And that image that I had pulled up is also something that someone who's currently making quality on wooden snowboards uses as well.
You've probably kind of shared behind the curtain, you know, what other brands some of those boards are like, I'm sure, right? I mean,
Mhm.
you're probably selling to other manufacturers.
Mhm.
So I think the most important thing right now is you guys developing that prototype and then validating its performance.
Right.
Right.
Because in the end, if it doesn't perform as well, people just won't buy it.
Yeah,
Or
quality's
somebody
king,
buys it
right.
and then word gets out, and that's the best way to kill a product, is
Makes
to not have a good one. So the performance side of it is gonna be critical.
Yeah.
And so as you do a prototype, you're probably gonna have to do multiple prototypes to get to something
Yep.
that performs.
Mhm.
But if it does, you're gonna need data on that. So the question is, have you allocated, money for
Beta testing?
testing
Yes.
and research? Right?
Yep,
So-
absolutely, that's all worked into our
Testing
expenses.
audience.
And also
Yeah.
Mervyn works with their clients through the prototyping process. So they've been doing this for over 20 years, so they do have a lot of experience that they can bring to the table.
So now you've tested the product, it works, and, you know, the sustainability piece, I understand the millennial, that is a true statement. So it might elevate you above and beyond some of the, current boards in the market, which I think is smart. And now you're successful, you have to buy inventory. Your upfront capital, I know you have some probably permanent working capital built in there, but how are you thinking about the growth curve and, now you have to bring in inventory. If you sell to retailers, you can probably do it on credit. So talk a little bit about how you're going to fund that.
Well, we've been reinvesting all the profits of our company back into the company, so we haven't been taking anything out. So collectively, up until year 3, all the money that we've profited from has been reinvested back into the company for future growth of these lines.
So Eric, I'm just going to tell you statistically, okay? And that's great, and that's good thinking. But unless your net profit margin is 10%, and some would say 15%, which is a very high net profit margin, or more, you're not going to be able to grow at 15% or more, which I know you're going to exponentially grow to start out with. So the mistake most new business owners make is not having your temporary working capital high enough and having planned for that. Because you may be super profitable, but then you don't have any cash in the till because it's tied up in inventory.
They
and
stop shipping you boards.
Right.
You get
So,
stuck.
so my advice to you is in your planning, look at how you're going to finance that working capital, because you could be highly successful with a great product, and you're hoping to be. And then as you're selling and you're doing very well, you run out of money. So just be mindful of that and maybe think that through in the next phase of what you do.
Are there any other products in this industry that sort of have that sort of sustainability component or that sort of angle? Are there other companies that are in the ski market that do something that you can either partner with or uses, or that is a competitor to you?
Yep, so sustainability is a trend, it's kind of the hot thing that everybody is jumping on board with, but not with this specific kind of wood. So we don't have
They do it with
competitors
different
in
woods?
this specific area.
We do know one that does different woods. It's called Arbor. It's out of California, and they use wood from trees in Hawaii in their manufacturing. And they also donate to like a lot of similar things as we're looking to do, giving back to the environment and the resources that we make our boards from.
And they've been successful with that?
Oh, they're very successful. They're a very well-known company.
How about ski companies? Could you partner, or binding companies? Are there potential synergies there to sort of get you some cash flow from non-traditional sources?
There are definitely potentials for a lot of different partnerships, whether it be bindings or boots, clothing. The possibilities are really endless when you think of in terms of partnerships. Just getting off the ground, we want to master one product first before we expand into other
But
markets.
I think the thread here is to be open to cultivating strategic partnerships with somebody like a binding company, where you're tiny, they're big, and you partner with them to say, okay, I'll work with you for 2 years exclusively if you give me $100,000 or $200,000 to fund the
Yeah.
working capital. But that, I mean, that's a clever way to do it, and it's cheaper and probably more efficient than going to banks or.
Right.
They may have the sales channels for you, and they have the distribution network, and they have the
Right.
relationship with the
Yeah,
stores,
that
and they have
is-
the manufacturer's reps, and there may be some real,
So,
Great.
so
lining all
Tom,
that up, so a lot.
I agree with that, I'm sorry. I'm in total agreement with what I call alternative equity capital, which is the partnering capital you're talking about. And when you do that, then you go to the bank, which, you know, arguably that capital might be the same or a little more expensive than bank financing.
Yeah.
But you go into the bank and say, we have this partnered relationship that is quasi behaves like capital. We'd like, you know, maybe an enhanced loan, an SBA loan that is safe and sound for the bank, but gets you that working capital that I'm talking about when you become
So,
successful.
and this is important because the quality of the counterparties that you deal with makes the whole difference as to whether or not you can actually get a new line of credit from the banks and everything, which is the way businesses grow. You know, you end up, you have to play a card and partner with somebody along the way, favor them in some way, because it favors you.
Right.
And you know, just, it is that, you can't wait until you need it. You have to develop it ahead of time so that when you're ready to access the partnership, that the partner's ready to sign up.
Better than giving up equity.
Yeah.
Keep your business.
It is.
Keep your business.
Absolutely.
We're- yeah.
Yeah. All right, thanks.
So, what we got-